The Last of Us was 2013's Game of the Year and remains the pinnacle of nuanced cinematic storytelling within the medium. Early reviews for the sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, were published Friday morning. As a whole, they suggest Naughty Dog's latest is visually stunning, but leans too heavily on violence instead of emotional depth. Will you still play it? Obviously. Will you enjoy it as much? That depends on what you loved most about the first game, and what you look for in your escapism. The Last of Us 2 picks up about 5 years after the first game and follows Ellie, now a brooding and distant young woman in her late teenage years. She lives in a post-apocalyptic settlement in the remote wilderness of Jackson, Wyoming with other survivors, including many new faces and Joel, her grizzled adoptive father figure from the first game. After an upsetting event rocks the community, Ellie embarks on a quest for revenge that leads her to the ruins of Seattle. Violence begets more violence, and The Last of Us 2 puts it all on full display. IGN gave The Last of Us 2 a 10 out of 10 score, calling it a masterpiece that rivals even beloved games like Red Dead Redemption 2, 2018's God of War, and The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Other reviews praise the game as a flawless and worthy follow-up, but there are some observations to be found in some of the more critical reviews. Abby is a new character that appears in the sequel. Naughty Dog, Sony Entertainment LLC. None of these reviews will confirm or deny those spoilers. The Last of Us Part 2 was marred by major leaked spoilers that hit the internet in early May, and none of the reviews are able to grapple directly with these, whether or not they're true or even how they feel delivered within the proper context. A huge swath of the game that spans about 12 hours is off limits for reviewers. This is where all of the game's biggest twists happen. I went into the game armed with all the knowledge of the leaks, thinking I could fill in the blanks of the story. The game still left me in shock, writes Gene Park for The Washington Post. It is very much an extension of the first game's themes and storytelling tricks. Game director Neil Druckmann noted to Park that the game is so much about hate and how we dehumanize each other, and you can see that happening with the leaks. While this makes it seem like the leaks may be true, there's a whole lot more to examine. The Last of Us Part 2's core gameplay feels upgraded, but outdatedA video review published by YouTube channel Skill Up is one of the more negative responses out there to the game, and a lot of that reasoning has to do with some of the narrative decisions made in the sequel. He calls it a weaker game than its predecessor, but he also notes that the core gameplay loop of stealth, loot, and shoot remains unchanged. Changes to exploration are minor, tired and outdated, which is to say that gameplay remains mostly the same.